Battersea, a presentation in words and pictures featuring London's oldest artefact, London's oldest name, hidden rivers, great art, iconic buildings, royal connections, cats and dogs, plumes of smoke, posh poo, a bad smell, and a bit of veg. What's that about a bit of veg? Most of Battersea was once fields where fruit, vegetables and flowers grew. Asparagus grew so well here it was sold as Battersea bundles. Sparrowgrass was a cheeky mispronunciation of asparagus. Until recently, a pub at the corner of Falcon and York Roads was named the Asparagus. Battersea's most abundant flower was lavender. Like much of Battersea's fascinating history, it survives in name as Lavender Hill. London's oldest artefact or relic is the Battersea Shield. It may have been thrown into the river deliberately as an offering to the gods to get their help against the invading Romans, who were led by Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is famous for saying, "I came, I saw, I conquered," except that in 55 and 54 BC he invaded Britain twice without conquering. The Romans successfully invaded in 43 AD. They founded the city of Londinium where they crossed the Thames. But the Battersea Shield dates back to one of Julius Caesar's earlier invasions. It is definitely older than the founding of Londinium. The shield was found in the river near Chelsea Bridge in 1857 and is now in the British Museum. After the city itself, Battersea is London's oldest place name. In 693, an Anglo-Saxon charter mentioned Badrisi's Ege. In Old English, this means the island of a man called Badrick. No, not Baldrick, so no cunning plan. Old English is the earliest form of English which was preserved as a language and an identity by Alfred the Great, as featured in the Last Kingdom series. Badrick's Island was one of the areas of solid ground around the original village where St Mary's stands. Today, the man who gave Battersea its name is commemorated by Badrick's Court. By the time of the Norman conquest in 1066, Old English was changing into Middle English. In the Domesday Book of 1087, Badrisi's Ege had become Patrici. King William I, also known as William the Conqueror, exchanged lands in Battersea for the grounds where he would begin Windsor Castle. Battersea's oldest landmark today is St Mary's Church. It was mentioned in a papal bull or executive order of 1157. The slipway beside St Mary's has been there as long as the church. Once they were drained, the marshes became fertile ground. By the 1700s, it was marked on maps as Battersea Common Field. As well as asparagus and lavender, peas, beans and even melons were grown there in market gardens. Here's the posh poo bit. The fields were fertilised by manure or night soil brought across the river in boats by nightmen. Nightmen collected the contents of the privies, cesspits and dung houses of town houses across the river. By law, they were only allowed to do this between midnight and dawn, but on their return journey, they carried the fruit and veg back to Covent Garden, where it was sold. This view of 1755 shows Battersea as the location of the desirable residences of the day along the riverbank. Another view shows it as a rural area of farmland and mills. One mill became, for a while, a Battersea landmark. It was known as the horizontal mill because instead of sails, wind came through a system of louvers and vanes in its sides. These turned a vertical axis which ground grain for distilleries and linseed for paint. A wooden bridge was built in 1772 at the site of the present bridge, which had been a crossing place for a ferry. The bridge helped get produce to Covent Garden. Turner and Constable both painted Battersea with St Mary's and the horizontal mill. In 1816, steamers began to take passengers on the Thames. In 1829, one such passenger created a record which showed more details of Battersea. Samuel Lee was a bookseller who published an elaborate panorama of the Thames. It was a fold-out book with 60 feet of hand-coloured pages. It showed both banks from London to Richmond. Lee's panorama shows industry creeping upriver, including the remains of the horizontal mill. As well as mills, there were numerous distilleries with piggeries attached. The pigs were fed on the leftover grain from the distilleries. One was on the site of York House. This had been the London residence of the Archbishop of York, where Price's Court is today. York Road was named after it. 1829 also saw horse-drawn buses begin in London. The first was Shillibeer's omnibus service. It ran from Paddington to Bank, but rivals soon appeared running routes elsewhere. Omnibus means for all in Latin. Its abbreviation is bus. By 1832 there were 400 horse buses operating in London. Industrial workers needed houses. Here are some surviving examples of 18th century small houses in Wandsworth. Sadly, the following period, 1820 to 1850, was notorious for jerry building. The workers' small houses suffered the most from this, but some houses survived into the 1950s. London's many hidden rivers have been covered over but still flow underground in drains and culverts. Battersea's hidden river is the Falcon Brook. It flows under Northcote Road and Falcon Road. It created the valley between Wandsworth and Clapham Commons. The Falcon Brook finally surfaced as it met the Thames in what was once Battersea Creek. This is now an overgrown pond beside Price's Court. The former asparagus pub at the bottom of Falcon Road has been renamed the Falcon Brook. Price's Candles set up beside Battersea Creek in 1832. Their main works were in Vauxhall. Price's used coconut and palm oils to make candles, soaps and lamp oil. Later they used other imported oils to make paraffin products. After the development of electricity in the early 1900s, they could still make motor oils and lubricants. They were taken over by Lever Brothers in 1919, but stayed in Battersea until 1998. The next industry to arrive was Garton's from Southampton in 1850. Garton's made a form of glucose known as saccharum. It had many uses, including light ale, a type of bottled beer. Garton's was responsible for the Battersea smell, an unpleasant cloying odour emitted when leftover fibre was heated to make animal feed. Some people blamed Price's for it. Others called Garton's Whiffins. Whiffins was actually a nearby pharmaceutical business. In 1838 the first railway entered the area. It was to London and Southampton. It had its original terminus at Nine Elms in Vauxhall until Waterloo Bridge Station opened in 1848. The bridge came first, and the station was named after it. In 1830 the common field was still open, but developments such as horse-drawn buses began to change Battersea from an outlying village into a London suburb. Instead of houses, Battersea Park was built over the former marshes for the benefit of the public as a green breathing space. It was thanks to the efforts of a local vicar and Thomas Cubitt the builder of Belgravia, across the river. Queen Victoria crossed the new Chelsea Bridge in 1858 on her way to open the park. Queenstown Road, Prince of Wales Drive and Albert Bridge Road all commemorate the royal family's involvement in the area. Clapham Junction, Battersea Station and the Cremorne Railway Bridge all opened on the same day, the 2nd of March 1863. Yes, there was a Battersea Station. It was bombed in 1940 and never reopened. Clapham Junction was a joint venture shared by 3 railway companies, the London and South Western, the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, and the West London Extension Railway. Of course, Clapham Junction is not in Clapham. It may have been so named to attract a wealthier clientele, but there were other Battersea stations, as on this 1912 map. Bradshaw's Railway Manual admitted in a footnote that Clapham Junction was 1.5 miles from Clapham. The main entrance to Clapham Junction is on Brighton Place, a nod to the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. The London and South Western pub is named after another one of Clapham Junction's original lines. Its descendant still runs through Clapham Junction. Today the overground crosses over the same railway bridge which had been used by the West London Extension Railway. The 1866 Ordnance Survey map shows the common field had not yet been completely built over, even after the opening of Clapham Junction and other stations. But Clapham Junction did attract wealthier middle-class customers for whom new medium-sized houses were built in the surrounding area, for example in Chivalry Road and on St John's Hill. Many of them would have been clerks, who were the number crunchers and word processors of the day. A whole house and a bit of garden was a real improvement on their former lodgings in a crowded pair of rooms. In 1871, a well-known Battersea institution, the Battersea Dogs' Home, arrived from Holloway, where it had begun as a temporary home for lost and starving dogs. A site by the railway suited it because no one could complain about the noise. It began accepting cats in 1883. Queen Victoria became its royal patron in 1885. It was rebranded as the Dogs and Cats Home in 2002. Another artist, James Whistler, depicted Battersea. His Nocturne in Blue and Gold was a view of Old Battersea Bridge. The largest local industry was Morgan's Crucible Company, which arrived in 1882. It began by making plumbago crucibles, pots made from clay and graphite, in which metal or glass could be smelted. It diversified to other carbon products. Known as the Plum, it became the biggest employer in the area until it moved to Swansea in the 1970s. Its site became the Morgan's Walk development. From 1906, horse-drawn vehicles began to be replaced by motor buses and electric trams. The power station is Battersea's best-known building. It came in 2 stages. Power Station A, with 2 chimneys, was completed in 1935. The second stage, Power Station B, with 2 more chimneys, was interrupted by World War II. During the war, both British and German aircraft used the plumes of smoke from its chimneys as a landmark. Perhaps this is why it wasn't bombed. Power Station B was built bit by bit. For a while, about 1946, it actually had 3 chimneys. It was finally completed in 1955 with its familiar 4 chimneys. It operated until 1983. It failed to become a theme park, but finally reopened as a shopping mall in 2022. The Festival of Britain in 1951 was intended to boost recovery from the Second World War and improve the rebuilding of British towns and cities. Its centrepiece was the South Bank site, but the Festival Pleasure Gardens took over the northern part of Battersea Park. The attractions included the Guinness Clock, a miniature railway and a fun fair. The funfair remained after the festival ended. It had swings, roundabouts and roller coasters, including the Big Dipper. It finally closed in 1974. Since 1990, the sites of Battersea's former riverside industries have become prime locations for luxury flats. A final bit about Battersea in popular culture. It has featured in many films, including the classic Ealing comedies The Lavender Hill Mob and The Lady Killers. It was also the setting for the 1968 drama Up the Junction. The power station appeared briefly in the Beatles film Help, Superman 3, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, the 1984 version of George Orwell's 1984, Children of Men, Batman The Dark Knight, Guy Ritchie's Rock'n'Roller, and The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. There were musical references on the album cover of Pink Floyd's Animals and Up the Junction by Squeeze. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for watching, and please leave a comment below.